Hey guys, welcome back to Amanda's Cozy Corner. I'm Amanda. Today we're going to do the May wrap-up and June TBR. I'm excited to get to this. I have read a lot this month. In fact, I should probably count up how many books that I've read because it's a bit more than I normally do. So, at least 8 books, which is not bad considering I generally read like a book a week-ish. So 8 is far beyond my normal. Let's go through the books that I read and pick some new ones out. The first one up is It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. This is a contemporary romance set on the West Coast. It is a romance between a famous LA starlet and a grumpy salt of the earth or salt of the sea fisherman that unlikely circumstances bring together, and I really liked it. It's really cute. I do like Tessa Bailey's writing. Her books are spicy, like not in the acts themselves, but the way that she writes dirty talk or sexual conversations is actually just filthy. It's just like all of a sudden this charming, respectful man turns into something completely different, and I eat it up every time I read one of her books. So highly recommend for a summer beach read. It's very cute. I was about to say wholesome, but it is wholesome, but it's definitely an adult relationship, and it's an adult romance. The next one that I read was Kakurio, or Bed and Breakfast for Spirits, Volume 9. This is a cozy manga series. It's been turned into an anime. It follows Aoi, I think I'm saying her name right, as she's a human girl who gets sort of sucked into the spirit realm, and now she's opening a cozy little restaurant. There's a lot more that happens. There is an actual plot, but the plot is very much part of the vibe, if that makes sense. It's just a fun, easy read, a great palate cleanser between books. Just something to chill out, relax. You can that there's not really going to be a ton of stress. I love it. Next one was Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross. This was my first 5-star book of the year. I absolutely loved Divine Rivals. Ruthless Vows, if I had to tier rank my 5 stars, it would probably be closer to the bottom of the 5-star tier, but I still loved it. I had some issues with where the description or where the story went. I wish almost that this was a trilogy instead of a duology, because I think there was a lot that was left unexplored that really could have taken this entire story to the next level. But that said, it is still a 5-star book for me because I loved the story, I loved the relationship, the romance, the tension, the drama. I think I'm rediscovering that I just really enjoy historical fiction and specifically World War I or World War II war stories, basically, which is a little bit of a surprise for me. But I would highly recommend, if you haven't read the duology yet, either finish it or read both books, because the end of book 1, Divine Rivals, ends on a massive cliffhanger, and the waiting for this book to come out was agonizing. And then the fact that I couldn't bring myself to read it because I didn't want to build my expectations up too high. Oh, I don't know if that's not an indication of a good story. I don't know what is. Then I finally finished Dragonfall by L.R. Lamb. I always switch her initials around. This was okay. I think I gave it a 3.5, 4 stars. I just don't know if I like heist books, and the pacing of this one was very weird. The ending has me very intrigued. Again, it ends on a cliffhanger, and the next book, I believe, comes out soon. What I do like in this book is that there is like, the way the world building and the society that is portrayed is very different from the typical fantasy society. It's a lot more, I guess, open in terms of people's sexual orientations and their identities, and just one of, like, the main characters are not heterosexual, like, cis people, and I appreciated that representation, because it's been a while since I've read a book with, especially, like, a main character that wasn't, like, I've read a lot of romance books, and they tend to be, like, very, they don't challenge the norms so much. So I appreciated that aspect of the book, and I appreciated that it wasn't necessarily, like, shoved in your face from the beginning. It was like you slowly realized over time that your main character never referred to themselves as, he or she, or they, like, it was never made, like, a huge big deal out of. Like, they had, like, one scene where the other main character was kind of learning these social norms, right? And, like, he identifies as a he, and, like, did the thing to kind of tell people, like, okay, these are my pronouns, basically. But then, like, the other main character kind of responded, okay, I'm a they. And, like, it was just kind of done in such a casual, nice, like, not a big deal manner that I really liked that. I liked the fact that this was not, like, it's such a big part of their society, but it's not something that needs to be, like, you weren't hit over the head as a reader with it. It was just like, yeah, this is how it is in this world, and, like, everyone's fine with it, which is cool. The next one that I read, I was on a fantasy romance kick, for sure, after Dragonfall. So I picked up The Serpent and the Wings of Night finally, and wow, this book takes you on a roller coaster. I see the parallels between, like, Fourth Wing. I see the parallels with, I think earlier, like, in my reading blog, I described it as Hunger Games meets From Blood and Ash, because there's vampires in this, by the way. It's not a spoiler, it's literally part of the blurb. But so this one is, human girl gets taken in by the vampire king and raised as his own daughter, trained up. She's part of a competition for the goddess of death, basically. And so she has to navigate this competition, and throughout the book there's large political maneuverings and other things happening outside of what you know. You just get hints and sneak peeks at it, but you don't really understand how it ties into this competition until the very end. And what I guess I think I wasn't supposed to like the ending, but I can see where this is going, and part of it makes me want to read the second book, and part of it makes me not want to read the second book. So I believe this is a duology, but I want to say that she's turned it now into a series, or I swear there's a third book out that is, like, has a very similar cover to the first two. I'll have to look. Didn't do my research, but I liked it. This is solid, like, 4.5 stars. Writing-wise, very easy to read. I liked the characters. I didn't like that for how sort of world-savvy our main character is. She fell a little too fast for me. That would be my only thing, is that, like, I wish there was a little bit more hesitancy and wariness on her part, like, actually demonstrated instead of told to us, if that makes sense. Finally, I did read a bunch of library books this month, and I think I want to keep doing that, but the danger with that is I have to return them. So by the end of the month, I don't necessarily have them here, and I don't want to hold on to them just for a video when there are other people who may want to read them. So I'm just going to pop up the pictures on the screen. I read All Good People Here. I don't remember the author's name. I didn't love it. Honestly, the more I think about it, the more I'm like, it wasn't a bad book, but it's like I will never read it again. And it really wasn't, I don't know, even like I felt like there were too many, like, oh, that person could have done it, but we're going to immediately cast them aside. Oh, that person could have done it, but we immediately found out that no, they didn't. You know what I mean? Like, I wish there was a little bit more suspense in this mystery suspense situation. I even felt like the spooky parts or the scary parts to our main character in that book really just didn't land for me. So the premise of that book was that a journalist is coming home to her very small town where her best friend, who lived across the street from her when she was very little, they were like 8 years old, best friend gets abducted and murdered. They never find the best friend's killer. Now, all these years later, she's coming back to the small town to take care of her ailing uncle, who's very much a father figure to her, and the day after she gets into town, another girl goes missing and ends up murdered. And so this kind of launches our investigative journalist into trying to dig up the truth behind both of these girls' murders. And like I said, the premise was good. It hooked me. I wanted to like this book, but it didn't land, is the best way I can say it. So that was like a 2.5 stars. I'm definitely getting into like the mystery thriller genre a bit more than I ever have before, and I'm looking forward to trying some different authors and some different books. So it hasn't put me off the genre, it's just that one wasn't a win for me. But the next two that I will talk about are the Veronica Speedwell series by Deanna Raybourn. So I have here A Murderous Relation, because I just finished this book a day or two ago. This is book 5. Yes, this is book 5, and I also read book 4, A Dangerous Collaboration. I liked both of them. I think if you get into this series, we follow Veronica Speedwell, who is a lepidopterist, which is someone who collects or hunts butterflies. She's a butterfly scientist. And her love interest, or companion, is Stoker Templeton Vane, they both have very complicated backstories. We go through them. I'm not going to give them away because that's what earlier books in the series are about. But I liked how in A Dangerous Collaboration, the mystery didn't catch me as much. I didn't really care too much for that particular mystery. But the relationship between the two, between Veronica and Stoker, was really the forefront, and I enjoyed that. I also liked how in A Murderous Relation, that tension was carried over into the next book and, really did inform a lot. The mystery in A Murderous Relation was much better, in my opinion. I think it mattered a lot more. So I really like this series. I'm all in on it. I picked up the next one, A Unexpected Peril, and I will be reading it this month in June at some point if I can work it into my TBR. It's again taken out from the library, so even if I can't work it in, it'll become one of my mood reads, I am sure. And that brings us to the final book, which is something I have on my Kindle/iPad, which is the volume 12 of Witch Hat Atelier. I read it the day it came out. I bought it, I read it, and I had to process for a little bit and then reread it. This is again another very whimsical, cozy fantasy. The art is just beautiful. I would really highly recommend it. The story is very much about growing up and kind of being a child and learning and growing, and what do you do when you have knowledge that the rest of the world doesn't have, and how do you use that knowledge responsibly, and what happens when you're told that you can't share that knowledge. So there's some really deep themes, there's some deep conversations and decision making that our main character Coco, her teacher, and her fellow students have to work through together. And I just really like it because there's a very hopeful tone to the story, even though there are some very dark things that happen. So I find it to be very cozy and a very comforting read. And like I said, the art is just gorgeous. Like, I'm really excited for that one to continue. But with that, we are on to June. And I think we're going to let's continue with the jar picks. It has been working for us so far. So I haven't the foggiest for what I want to read, other than some of my library books that I've taken out, but I'm sure that we can work them in to this situation somehow. That it says the chopping block. Read and unhaul at least one book. So that means I have to, some point throughout the month, read one book from my shelf and either unhaul the book I've read or unhaul a different book. I do have a small unhaul pile going already, but I don't want to cheat, so I'm going to read one that is on my list of exploding books. I think we're going to go with this one. This is The Naming by Alison Croghan. It is a high fantasy book one in the Books of Pelennor series. This is an older series for sure. I remember reading it when I was young, but it is a story, I think it has a little bit of a chosen one aspect, if I remember right. There's definitely a rags to powerful aspect, and what I both loved and didn't like about this series was how our main character was so very flawed, from what I remember. Now, as a young person reading this, I was definitely not used to an author writing such a flawed main character, because I was, again, in middle school, so it's most of your characters are inherently good, they always make the good choice, they always are the better person, right? They don't lash out or act in ways that you're told not to as a child, if that makes sense. This was kind of my first foray into an imperfect main character, and I want to reread it as an adult because I think I might identify or appreciate that aspect of this story a little bit more now. Pick number 2 is a mystery. Cool. So I already know what I'm going to read for that one. Yep, we're going to do An Unexpected Peril by Deanna Raybourn. I was going to look for an excuse to read this anyway, so I'm thrilled that that's coming up. Oh, and if anybody is wondering, I think I mentioned this in my other vlog. My library, on your receipts, your checkout receipts that has your return date and everything, they also put on there how much money you have saved by checking books out of your library. So I'm up to $375 now, which is insane. All right, and book number 3 for the monthly TBR is a nonfiction. Let's see if I can. A nonfiction. Also good because I've had a little bit of a itch to read a nonfiction. Now, I have Atomic Habits started, and I've been reading this really slowly. This is kind of my motivation book to work out and change my life and whatever. So that means it doesn't really hit the same every day. So part of me is thinking, okay, I can read part of this book and count it as my nonfiction read. But the other part of me is wondering if perhaps we pick up an autobiography. So I've been wanting to read this one for a while. This is Monsters, an autobiography of an LA gang member by Sinika Shakur, aka Monster Cody Scott. He did change his name while he was in prison. So he's in prison for life for, I think, 4 murders that he committed when he was 11 or 13 years old, something like that. He was born in, I believe it's the South Central LA. So he said, the quote from the book said, I propose to open my mind as wide as possible to allow all my readers the first ever glimpse at South Central from my side of the gun, street, fence, and wall. And that, I don't know, this is the kind of stuff that kind of interests me, so this might be on the docket. But with that, I hope that this last month of reading has been good to you guys. Have you had any 5-star books? Are there any books that you would recommend? I also am hoping to get to some more recent new releases this month, so keep an eye out for that. And always, happy reading. I hope your book is treating you well. So yeah, have a good one.